Hi everyone, I'm joined here today by James Porter from our Galway office, who is specialising in quality engineering recruitment in both medical devices as well as pharmaceutical sectors. He covers all of the roles nationwide, and he will talk today about biggest trends in quality engineering.
Perfect. Thanks very much for having me. I'm a little bit off brand today with my red tie and my red shirt. I should have worn something blue, but there we go. That shows you how prepared I am.
Excellent, excellent, James. Perfect. So could you tell us what are the biggest trends in quality engineering?
So I suppose with regards to the impact from COVID-19 and the trends that have kind of subsequently come from that, what I've mainly seen is that a lot of companies have tried to hire for Six Sigma or continuous improvement. That's kind of at operations level, supplier quality level, or just in general to kind of bring in a lean specialist or Six Sigma specialist. I suppose realistically, what a lot of those jobs have happened as well is that there's been a bit of regulatory affairs introduced too, but probably not as much. Due, I suppose, to the new MDR regulations that were coming in, a lot of companies were already hiring for those positions, which are very tricky to fill. So a lot of companies, because they've been told by the MDR board that they won't have those implemented for another while, they've had at least an extension on those. So yeah, it's mostly been around continuous improvement and obviously cost saving. A lot of projects have been, I suppose, put on the back burner for companies. So there's been a little bit of a drop off in contracting as such. That's now subsequently, I suppose, flipped a little bit, and some companies are back to hiring contractors. And probably just, I suppose, the biggest thing obviously was about market confidence. Probably what was happening was that companies were unsure what way it would go, whether they'd be able to have people on site, and just had to kind of test the waters as well. But now a lot of the people that were working from home are now slowly and gradually coming back on site. Some roles, obviously, as I mentioned, with regards to the continuous improvement or the regulatory affairs, are being done for I suppose, the best of their ability from home as well at the moment. But yeah, I suppose, as I said, the biggest trends have kind of been centered around kind of supplier quality and development, and that kind of cost saving. I dabble a little bit as well in supply chain, and definitely there was a huge uptake in supply chain positions because obviously there was extra requirements and extra pressures put on the supply chain networks for a lot of companies too.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And you've touched a little bit on the requirements. Is there any specific degree that those people have to have, or do they have to have any work permit in order to work in Ireland?
Yeah, so I suppose that's another thing. Quality in general is quite a difficult area to recruit for because there's probably not as many people in it, and as well as that, there's a high level of scrutiny around people's experience and the industry they work in. Whereas in other industry, I suppose in other types of roles, the industry doesn't matter as much. In medical device, unfortunately, the companies are very strict on who they take from, and they tend to pick coming from biotechnology or medical device already, or something highly regulated. So definitely, I suppose what I've recommended to people who are coming from outside of the industry is to go with an in-pharma degree. It's a nice add-on. You can do it, I think to the most part online, or you don't have to be on site and you do it part-time. I think also Sligo IT offer a lot of online courses as well. So those type of things will definitely add and make it easier to make that transition coming from outside. Now, for those people who are in medical device already, which is, I suppose, the bulk of what I recruit for, or maybe pharma, the best thing to do there is to try and look at Six Sigma or kind of lean type degrees, because that's been a huge part of a lot of companies looking to cut costs. I suppose compared to the automotive industry, the medical devices and pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, they weren't so focused on the Six Sigma, the lean type thinking. Maybe that's because I suppose a lot of that was engineered and started off in the Japanese automotive industry, and then obviously carried throughout the world. So I still think a lot of medical device biotechnology companies, which is the bulk of what Ireland have, are still probably a little bit behind, and that's why they're now introducing so many of these type of roles, and they're becoming so prevalent. So yeah, I definitely think as well it doesn't really harm to have that in your back pocket, because a lot of, if you're either working in NPI or operation support or regulatory affairs or even supplier quality or any real area within quality engineering or quality assurance, one of the main tasks you have is to continuously think about how you're going to improve either the systems or the process, or how about you're going to get that extra bit of cost or yield out of the manufacturing floor.
Excellent, excellent. And the new trend of working from home. is it the scenario that people are working more for working from home right now? Do you see people going back to the office, or do you maybe have some roles that are fully remote?
Yeah, so I suppose when things started off, that was probably our first question whenever we were talking to the hiring managers: is this going to be, a possibility for people to work from home because they're worried about their family safety and their own safety? Now, several roles, once again going back to the kind of regulatory affairs, were made completely, remote, or they allowed them to do that. And I definitely saw from a lot of the managers that I was dealing with, they were allowing their staff to work, from home if they didn't need to be on site. And I think that's where it came from. It's kind of a case of, if it's a necessity to be on site, then they, obviously have to. But if there's any, wiggle room around whether you can do your documentation control or whether you can do your systems control from home, then perfect. And I think as well, I suppose I was talking to one company at the start of lockdown who were recruiting for a supply chain manager, and they had said that previously, before lockdown, they had noticed the trend, obviously, that a lot of companies were talking about, being more open to remote working and assisting people in, having that, extra flexibility for young families or anything. But they said that they'd never done it because they were afraid, once they'd given it to their employees and it didn't work, that if they took it back, then there would be uproar and that there'd be a lot more hassle then for HR to deal with, and a lot more unhappy employees, and possibly a retention issue as well. But because obviously COVID forced everyone into having to work from home, it's been a great trial run for a lot of companies to allow people to start working from home again. I definitely think it's here to stay, and a lot of companies will now, I think, move away from having such massive offices in the city centres and actually move towards, say, what Apple would have done before, which is send out all the technology to the home of the employee and allow them to work from home whenever they want, or fix their own days as such. Now, for myself, I suppose, I suppose this kind of probably mirrors what a lot of people felt at the start. I found the technology infuriating, and it was very difficult to get yourself set up. Then I went through the perfect, I suppose the honeymoon scenario of, this is brilliant. I really can't get enough of this. This is definitely the way I want to work for the future. And then you had your tough days inside and work. And what really always picks you up in recruitment is the people working around you. So I miss the kind of buzz. And look, I think we've all made the jokes of, the Zoom quizzes, they don't match up to what kind of, banter, or what kind of, feel good factor you get from talking around with people. So it's a mixed bag. And it's definitely something I think that a lot of companies should introduce in maybe kind of a mixed manner, that you have, a certain amount of days on site in a rota, and then allow at least, people to be safe on site, but also, to not feel alone, isolated, or even, the mental health aspect of it as well. So yeah, and I think what'll probably happen, and this is probably a bit of a long shot, but I think a lot of companies will move away from having the larger offices in the city centre and start maybe having those kind of hotspot WeWork type offices instead, where, they rent out certain spots and they allow them to kind of, work as they want.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Yourself, sometimes it's difficult to find the right candidate who might be living, in a completely different part of the country. And this way, it might be actually easier to find the right talent. So from this perspective, 100% agreed. Talking about roles and the jobs that you're recruiting for, what will be the two most urgent roles that you need to fill?
Yeah. So I suppose it's been a bit of a roller coaster since lockdown. That, 1 week you've loads of positions open up, the next week it might take a bit of a downturn. But the two most urgent ones I have at the moment is, there's a quality program manager position here in Galway. This person will have one direct report, will have a dotted line to someone in Galway, and then also reporting into someone in the US. Now, this role is focused purely around development and strategy improvement. It has, I suppose, a bit of an implementation of design assurance around cardiovascular devices. But if you're not coming from a design assurance background, there's no problem. Realistically, what they do want is just someone who's got that strong program management, project management, and strategy development as well. And the other position that I'm recruiting for is a quality engineer. Surprise, surprise. I think at this stage, most companies are crying out for these type of people. So there's one particular medical multinational who are going through a huge amount of development, and they carried on, I suppose, non-stop through lockdown itself. They have loads of MPI projects, loads of tech transfer projects. This site in Galway has thrived over the last, say, 10 years, and has really become the focus of, I suppose, their excellence programs and the development of new devices on site as well. So between the two of them, they've been the main ones. But we've loads of other positions as well. So please get in touch.
Great, great. So how people can get in touch with you?
So if you email jporter@sigmar.ie or call 091 455 305.
Excellent, excellent. Look, James, it was a pleasure chatting to you today. And if you have any more questions, you can directly message James on LinkedIn, or some post more questions below. Thanks, James.
Cheers, Marcel. Have a good day.